Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well.
We're all in our places with bright, shiny faces. It's good to see you. Um, Brittany, just a few things. One is we are going to have a bunch of breakout rooms today. So we're
Okay.
doing something a little bit different today, and it totally could be random. If we can put like 4 or 5 people, depending on how many people show up, just ideally 3 to 5 people in a group is fine.
Okay.
And they're only going to last a short period. So each one is going to be about 5 to 7 minutes long. So I'll kind of guide you. Will you be doing the breakout rooms? Can you
So
do them?
yes. We kind of have to tag team a little bit because I have a meeting at 11. And so Molly Cook, who
Yeah.
I believe you've met, she will be
Yeah.
hopping on a little bit before then. So you'll have me in the morning. I'll do all the housekeeping, all that stuff that Kirsten does. Do some of however many breakouts we have before that time, and then I will transition that over to Molly. Um, and so with the breakouts, it shouldn't be an issue. I mean, if we want to kind of keep them mixed up so that participants have a chance to talk to new individuals and hear different perspectives, I think that works great. And then Molly knows how to man the breakout rooms and make sure that one stays in here so that we can record it and all of that fun stuff.
That'd be great. And again, they're not going to be really that long. It's just I want to get them discussing and kind of coming back with some ideas. This last session is really going to be, we're trying to get it as interactive as possible,
Okay.
because it's the last session and really want to be able to answer their questions like that they may have. And this has not been the most interactive group, at least
Okay.
virtually. So getting them to kind of engage is going to be a little bit more of a challenge, but it's not going to be a lecture. It probably will run for about an hour, maybe an hour and 20 minutes most. It's not going to be a full 2 hours this time. We just
Okay.
don't need it. And then we are going to, we're working on that next convening. So I'm just trying to get the venue confirmed, and I'll know that later today. So I'll get that to Kirsten.
Okay. Perfect. Perfect.
Cool. On my list of people, if you see them come into the waiting room, is just Andrea Lopez.
Okay.
And she's just co-facilitating today. And I do it. Do I have shareability here?
Yes, I
There's
just
got,
gave you
I
a
think there's
go-go.
a word for that possibly, but I'm not sure what it is. We'll go with shareability for now.
That works. I knew exactly what you're talking about, so it worked.
Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. Let's get this. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Do you guys hear any background noise?
No, do you hear any from me?
Yeah, do you have your washing machine going?
You can hear it?
No, I'm just kidding.
Shut up. Can you hear it? My dryer's on.
No, no, no. I was just kidding you because my dryer's on and I just wanted to see if you could hear it. I was mentioning to Brittany's only going to be here with us for the first hour, but I was mentioning to her that we're going to be doing a bunch of breakout rooms. So we're going to try and randomize them along the way and kind of get a whole bunch of people just engaged, and we'll see how that flies. And we'll probably only going to be going for about we probably won't use the whole 2 hours. So I imagine an hour to an hour and a half is where we're going to land. So I'm okay with that.
Do we know how many people to expect?
30,000. I don't know.
The usual?
It's weird. I no, like, yeah, I mean, we've been getting.
I think that once there was the summit and then there was Memorial Day, I think that people, yeah.
Dropped off.
Yeah.
And it may even be shorter than that. It may just be a discussion with whoever's on. I know Mark is going to be on, Lohman will be on, and I know there may be some employers on today. But we'll see what happens, The one thing that's good is that the workshop has, I mean, the slide deck I'll share with you guys and with Kirsten so she can get it attached. But I mean, from the content end, we've done a lot in content on the resourcing end. So I think we're going to be in pretty good shape. Yeah, there's some different people coming on. Okay. I think we'll be good.
And then Andrea, would you like to be made a co-host for any reason?
No.
No. Okay.
Thank you. There's no reason to give me any sort of control over anything.
I always like to ask,
I appreciate that.
Got 3 minutes left.
And so Jeffrey, when you're presenting, do you like to have just everyone's cameras up so you can see feedback? Do you prefer to be spotlighted? Or do you have a
Yes. Yeah, I prefer to have everybody, so the slide deck is up, but I prefer to have everybody on camera so
Okay.
that we can see them. And I have multiple screens here. So one camera would have everybody's picture on it. So I can call them out if they're sleeping.
Which I laugh, but it's happened before.
Oh my God.
Sessions I've been on.
I've had so many funny things that happened since throughout COVID.
Yeah.
I was on a call once where a guy was actually in bed, laying in bed on a call. Yes.
Which I mean, I can understand at the beginning, right? When we're all getting used to Zoom, but it's been a few years now, and I would hope that people would know how to control whether or not their camera is on.
Well, Jeff, I don't want to get too personal, but what kind of a call was it? I mean, maybe it was appropriate.
No, it was not appropriate. And I kind of called it out and let them know. Got a minute left.
And then I'll do the usual housekeeping that Kirsten does and putting the link to the address in the chat and everything before I hand it over to the two of you.
Great.
Okay, well, we're right at 10 o'clock. So if you both are ready, I'll go ahead and open up the waiting room.
Go for it.
All righty. Good morning, everyone. Give it a couple of seconds here to let everybody get connected to their audio. I'll go ahead and fill that space so you can make sure that your audio is working properly. All righty, I think we've got everyone in from the waiting room at this moment. So good morning and welcome to the Returning Citizens Workshop. This is number 6 of the webinar series. My name is Brittany Boston with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University. I will be the moderator and technical support for today's webinar. My colleague Molly Cook will be joining us shortly and also will be providing as technical support and moderator for today as well. So today's topic is making change happen, transforming our justice systems to workforce systems. We invite all attendees to fully immerse themselves in today's session, so feel free to turn on your cameras and mute yourselves to participate in the discussion opportunities. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded. The presentation and recording, along with any materials presented during today's session, will be available on our Reentry Workshop Series website within 48 business hours. In an effort to be as accessible as possible, this webinar will be offering closed captioning, as well as the recorded session will encompass closed captioning. We will be having breakout rooms today for discussion. So if you need closed captions during your breakout rooms, please privately chat me and I will make sure that you remain in the main room for breakouts, as Zoom does not allow closed caption during breakout rooms. Tomorrow, each attendee will receive a follow-up email. This will include a survey asking about today's webinar. We do ask that you provide feedback and any suggestions you have to help improve upcoming workforce webinars. As a reminder, if you have any issues with your internet connection or would prefer to call in, there is a call-in number on your original registration email. And so with that, I will hand it over to our presenters for today.
Good morning, Illinois. How is everybody? I'm glad to see so many people on. We are well, I'm sure we're gonna have some more guests along the way. I promise you it's gonna be an engaging morning. This is the 6th workshop and our final workshop of Untapped Talent. And we've been so blessed with being able to present to everyone in the state of Illinois and your workforce systems. But today is the culmination of a lot of discussion and a lot of really engaging and interesting feedback that we've gotten. And we're really looking forward to today's presentation about making change happen and really looking at how we transform our justice systems into the workforce of tomorrow. So I guess where to start is really with some overview of the reality that this is the 6th workshop that we've been doing. Some have been live, some have been virtual. Some of you have attended all of them. Some of you have attended some of them. Some, this might even be the first one you've been to. But part of the project involves not only this workshop series, but also some assistance in getting a get ready, get set, get out program from behind the walls. And as people navigate home together for the state, we're putting the final touches on that, as well as an employer convening. I see him on the screen in the center. Mark Lohman helped facilitate the last one out in Illinois a few weeks ago, and we'll be doing another one June 21st. And we're just waiting for confirmation. We'll hopefully have that today in Chicago, where the convening will hold, and we're hoping to bring together a whole number of employers to really help them understand how to work with people that are justice impacted. And then finally, one of the things we have been sharing has been all the resources, and we have probably 7 or 8 slides of resources that we've been accumulating throughout this journey together, and we'll be putting that into a handbook so that everybody can use it and keep it on their desk and on their laptops so that they can share it with the rest of whoever else they may need. So we're going to take a walk through today about the 6th series. We'll kind of go into overview of what we've covered. And then you're going to hear a little bit more from both myself, but I want to give a big shout out and hearty welcome to Andrea Lopez, who's been helping facilitate. Andrea, how are you?
I'm great. Nice to see you. Nice to see everybody.
It's great to see you. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for all your participation and help in this project. So we're going to kick us off with a question for all of our viewers today. And if you can, today is the kind of session where, if you're at all possible and you can get on screen, it's going to be really important as we dive into some of this, because there's going to be a bunch of discussions, and I think it would be really helpful to get on screen, stay engaged. We're going to kick us off with one question. What's one question, a burning question that you would like answered, which could help you to engage with work and with justice impacted individuals? So what's a question that's been burning that you've been trying to get an answer to and just have not been able to really get a grasp on it? Maybe we didn't cover it. I think we covered a lot, but maybe we didn't. So what's a burning question that you have? Because this is our last session today of the series, we want to make sure that we answer those things that have been on your mind and things that we want to we want to be able to cover so that we can help you do your job a lot better. So I'm going to give you a second to put some of that information in, but a burning question. We're going to get started there. I'll give you a minute. Welcome, everybody. Andrew, you see anything in the chat box? No? Everyone's just waiting to hear some pearls of wisdom from us. That's okay too. Well, Andrew, you'll watch that chat box for me. If you see anything of you like to throw in there, be my guest. We'll go get moving
So
forward.
here's a question. Is there a risk or needs assessment tool for employment of justice impacted job seekers?
Super good question. There are a number of risk needs assessments that are out there that can help people, employers, and workforce developers. So I think one of the things that I center on is not so much the risk assessment tools that are out there, but the need assessment tools that are out there. Like, what do people need when they come home? And I think if you can capture what they need and you're able to help them kind of navigate that next step, then the risk is what it is. And I think if you're really smart about what your target you're looking for as far as a skill development and the talent you're looking to bring in, that's going to kind of guide you through the process. And I'm not as concerned about the risk unless it involves something that they legally cannot do while at work. For example, if there is something in their indictment or their judgment that says they cannot participate in their prior profession as an insurance agent or as a lawyer or whatever it is, then those are things that you that would raise red flags for you that you should be careful about. But the flip side of that is the really needs assessment. And I'm trying to get more and more facilities and correctional facilities around the country to be thinking about what is the needs that people focus on when they come home. And we talked a lot about throughout the course of the workshop, and we're going to be talking about more of it today as we dive into those needs. Was there anything else, Andrea, that popped out at you?
No, but to follow up on that question, so we talked about, I remember when we were at the summit, and we talked about, how important it is to just have an initial conversation with people, like, what do you need? Where are you at? Because even though there's probably a list of maybe 10 to 15 things that everybody needs, there are different people are going to have different priorities at any particular time. Do you recommend just asking the question, or do you recommend giving people something to fill out, like a specific, survey?
So there's different ways of going. I recommend first having them document it so that you can actually have a record of what their need might be and how you can kind of guide them or help them move it forward. But more importantly, you need to ask the question. And one of the things we're going to try to do today is actually get everyone on this call to wear some different glasses and really focus on what is it that they see when they come home. And what they see is often really, really different than what you're experiencing or what you see as a workforce developer, as an employer, as a stakeholder. So really understanding and focusing on what is it that the individuals that are up for employment see, and they might tell you really different things. They might tell you, or they may be reluctant to tell you, I don't have a way to get to work my first day. I don't have work boots my first day. I actually don't have a bank account I can deposit my check in. All those barriers that they're facing that are weighing heavy on their mind. Just imagine if they were able to get them out and be able to share them with you in a really meaningful way. Those are the kinds of assessments that you really want to, what is it that you need to be successful? And I love that question at work. Like, what is it that you really need to be successful with our company? And maybe it's, I need a little bit more training in computers because I don't have any computer literacy. I need some of those basic things that I need guidance on, or I need to know how to get to work. I don't need to know how to use this machine, whatever it is. I think you need to ask the question. I kept saying throughout the course of this series that the one piece of advice I give everyone is assume nothing. Never assume that someone knows how to turn a computer on, that they know how to get to work, that they that they know when you task them to do something internally, that they understand how to do it, or even what an I-9 form is, or what a W-2 is, or how to understand their paychecks. Like, if you don't assume anything, then you're going to protect yourself really well, because you're going to educate them in a way that makes sense to you and makes sense to them and get their questions answered. We feel free during this whole workshop today. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat box. Any of these burning questions as we go through this discussion today, we want to make sure that we capture them. So we started this journey with asking the question of why. So why is it that we should hire men and women that are justice involved? Why is it that, as an employer, we should open that door? Why is it that we do the work that we do? And it was really interesting, Andrew, because we saw this at the symposium when we were out in Chicago, out in Illinois, when we asked everyone, tell us what you define as success. Like, how do you see success? And it was really cool to see because everybody had kind of different answers. Some people well, it's about retention, it's about keeping the job. And some people was about stability or about making money in the company. Like, everyone had a different answer, but I think it all starts with why. Like, why are you doing this? Why is this important? And there's some really practical ones that we discussed. I mean, besides the moral obligation of helping people, the humanity of everything. Right now, the true why for a lot of employers is the reality that there are more jobs out in today's world than there are people to fill them. And being able to fill some of that void and in the labor market and an employment arena makes a stronger company and also brings talent back to work. It really brings them into the workforce and labor systems. And then there's this intrinsic thing that we don't even know how to really quantify, but how many people that are justice involved when they come off all of our benefit systems, like what's the benefit to society there? And we know we're getting them employed and we know we're giving them an income. So we also know that they're coming off of our welfare rolls and they're finding a career pathway. And then there's something even harder to really quantify, and that's really their children, and they're proud of mom and dad when they're going to parent teacher conference, and that mom and dad are working and they're putting them in nice clothing and a warm jacket in the winter and food in their belly, like all these things. Like, how do you really quantify that? So we started with why and really looking at the justice system and really what was happening in the scope of our system, our justice system, recognizing that we are the most incarcerated country in the world, and also recognizing that we need to change the systems. We need to start thinking differently, acting differently in order to get people and talent back to work. We had session 2, which was really the intersection of justice and education and understanding better our education systems behind the walls, and really how important education is in all of this. And I use education, and I have used it throughout these sessions, with not just about GED or high school equivalency or college. It's really about the skills that people need to succeed, the education and information they need to succeed. Digital literacy, financial literacy, really whatever it is, whether it's reading a document or a manual or doing the basic math, all of those things fall into my blanket of education. And then how do you build education and skill development both inside and outside of the walls? So that intersection and how important it is having a captive audience inside, and how important we need to change our correctional education systems to really take advantage of a captive audience and people that really want to learn and want to better themselves. Session 3 was about a look back in time, and that was looking at getting people ready for what happens when they walk out that door. So if you remember, I used the analogy that when you walk out of prison or jail, there's this fast flowing water outside, and it often captures people and takes them back down the river to where they had gotten into trouble before. So how do we prepare people before they come home? What is it we need to be doing and centering on inside of our prisons and jails? And connecting them. And one of the big things we talked about was the connection with our career links and career jobs, American Job Centers and career one-stops. Like, how do we embed them in the process early on and behind the walls to really help them navigate that next step? After that, we went on to the right fit and really making sure that employers and people that are working in this space know that it's not just about a job. It's about finding a career, helping that career placement piece, and that hiring process. Like, how do we do it? How do we navigate getting people into those career opportunities, and what's it look like from the application process all the way through to the retention process? Like, what is the process inside of employers, and what should it look like? What should it look like for stakeholders, and how should they be engaged? And we talked through a lot of those in session 4. And then session 5 was at the symposium, which is really about keeping talent. Like, how do we get people to stick in jobs? Because the truth is, that's the name of the game. If you can get somebody to do something they love, they're going to stick with it, and they're going to enjoy it, and they're going to move on. They're going to want to advance and learn and move into a higher position. So that was our sessions, and now we're at session 6, which is really about making justice happen in our workforce systems. So before I have this glass elevator picture in our slide deck, and well, first, I'm a big Willy Wonka fan, so I love the idea of I love Willy Wonka, I love chocolate, but I love the analogy and the vision of actually getting on a glass elevator, seeing what's all around you as you go up the elevator, and then realizing in order to make a difference in the world, you need to sometimes go through the roof. And today we're going to be focusing on going through the roof. Like, I want everyone on this call to hit that red button. If you remember, Charlie hit that red button that sent them through the roof. We're going to do that today. We want to hit the red button because it's the only way we really can make change happen, is by starting to think differently than we have before. There's what's the definition of insanity? Is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. So today we're going to be talking about transformation and how do we make change happen? How do we move the needle? And we're going to be diving into that. We know that it takes a village, that there are all these people that are in the center of the work that we do, from our American Job Centers to our reentry programs, occupational training programs and partners, our employers that are out there, our community partners, and our education partners. It takes everyone to be jumping in this work to really guide people and help them become successful. It is not a single player here that is going to carry the ball over the end zone. It's going to be all of us that work together to make this happen. And these are kind of the key buckets that we're going to be going into and discussing today in a little bit more length. So the first is our workforce development partners. So here's the exercise and the challenge for today. The challenge for today is, as we go through each of these stakeholders, I want you to put on their glasses. I want you to see the world through their eyes. I want you to pretend, just even if you're an employer, I want you to pretend you're a workforce development partner right now. And I want you to start diving in, and we're going to do this in a really intentional way. The first question that we're going to be asking everyone to think about is, what should or could workforce development partners be doing to make change happen? So, wow, that's like a real softball for you guys. Like, what is it that workforce development partners could or should be doing to make change happen? And what we're going to do now is we're going to put everybody into breakout rooms. And when you come back, they're going to be short. There's going to be a bunch of these, but they're going to be short. So for the next, we're going to go 7 minutes on this because we have some workforce developers here. So for the next 7 minutes, I want you to answer this question, and then I want you to come up with those list of things that you're going to make change happen. What is it that we could or should be doing to make that change? So I'm going to ask Brittany, I think, to throw us all into breakout rooms, and we're going to give you 7 minutes to come up with this list. I want it strong. I want to know what's going to move the needle on this. How are we going to make change happen for the workforce development sector? So you want to throw us into some breakout rooms for 7 minutes?
Yep, so I will open these and you'll get prompted to join a breakout room. If you are not prompted to join a breakout room, that just means you're staying in the main room, but you still will be in a breakout.
Great. So we'll get every chance to get back. Yeah, really. Everybody's jumping in. So this is kind of really cool because you're getting it. You're getting it. We had a great discussion in my group, and I'm gonna reach out. I know Andrea's smiling already, so I know they had a good discussion. But I'm glad to see Craig on the call and some others that wear different hats as well. But from the workforce development hat, I'm curious, like what awesomeness did you guys come up with? Andrea, kick us off. Who was in your group and what was part of the discussion?
My group was so huge, we barely had a chance to all hear each other. It was just Mark and I. So we had a very good discussion. I'll defer to Mark. But not surprisingly, it included communication. That was our takeaway, but I'll defer to Mark.
What do you got, Mark?
We talked about the importance of collaboration in the workforce partners space. There are state and local governments. There are not-for-profit organizations, local or large, businesses, employers, labor unions, and that collaboration really seems to help, as opposed to just having employment service or just having training. We talked about stepping stones from training, whether certain types of training programs inside of prisons and reentry centers can be effective or not, but sometimes even a simple training program can provide a starting point for somebody's career pathway upon release. And those were a couple of the bigger things.
Awesome. So thanks, Mark. We're going to get back to you in a minute too, because I love the collaboration idea. I think Jessica she wears a DOC hat, and thank you for jumping on today. But yeah, that was kind of the one word that you started with was collaboration, how we can all make that happen. From the DOC, and I'm curious, Jessica, I'm calling. So I call out all my friends on the call. Just you're all fair game today. We're all friends now. From the DOC perspective, like how hard is it to bring that workforce collaboration piece behind the walls? And I know you guys have been doing a great job at kind of getting some of this off the ground and spreading it across the state. How difficult and how challenging has it been? And are there things that you're seeing that maybe you want other people on the call to think about?
I think it varies for the facility. Obviously with the security level, it's going to be more difficult in some than it is others. I think we always throw out Kewaunee just because they're kind of they're the diamond of Illinois DOC as far as that goes, and because they've got so many good programs, that's what they do. But then there's going to be other facilities, the Pontiacs, the Menards, parts of Stateville, where it's going to be more difficult just because security level or staffing levels. That can also make it difficult as far as if you're bringing those resources internally. As far as the willingness, as Mark, obviously we've been on the calls together doing this collaboration. So that's not difficult at all to get the partners in order to, want to collaborate. And actually Mark was on the call with me when we were talking with one of the facilities a week, 2 weeks ago, something like that. And that's when we had decided the hybrid model, as I discussed in the breakout, was a little better, where the things that can be more broad, we're going to do statewide or at least regionally. And then other things that need to be done in person, that's where we'll start to kind of coordinate that. So getting that coordination isn't difficult. It's just logistically what's going to make it easy, and then what's going to actually bring more resources in.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks, Jessica. I know in my group, and then we're going to hit some other groups, Lori Warren really brought up. So I want everybody to follow Lori's lead today in her discussion, because she brought something up, which is kind of creative and innovative, which definitely would move the needle. Lori, you want to share with us a little bit about what you guys are doing?
I was just talking about last week. I actually went out to Kewaunee Life Skills and they have started, there's a Rotary Club that they started, but they're doing these peer groups to start educating each other. So when they have, they were talking about one group, there's two guys who used to be roofers. So they were bringing other guys into this group and doing like some peer training on what it was to be a roofer, what skills you had to have, and start teaching them to help with the opportunity. And then I've been reaching out to get textbooks in regards to different trainings, so that if they do have these peer groups, say we actually would have textbooks. Like if you went to college to learn how to be a carpenter, there's textbooks on carpentry, or you know what I mean, that kind of thing, so that maybe that would help them. Also got some feelers out for like IT books and availability for the discs that come in with the books, so that they could actually put them on the computers there, because then it's closed circuit, it's not on the internet. But again, they're textbooks, and then I'm gonna work on helping them to do outreach and start to be able to get material so that they can teach each other. And be able to teach somebody to move, keep it going and move on. So when somebody gets released, somebody else could kind of take the lead of a group. Also, we're going to create a peer group that is going to be, I'm going to train the trainer kind of thing, and they're going to do what we do. They are going to sit down and, talk to somebody and figure out, what are those obstacles? What services do you need? If you want to get training, what kind of training will you want to get? Where, when you're getting out, who would you contact to get assistance with these things? So we're going to start creating a group so they can actually help each other do what we do.
I love it. Awesome. Great stuff. Anybody else want to jump in the pool? That the credible messenger and train the trainer and mentoring is just so invaluable and could be a game changer for so many people behind the wall and navigating the next step in the employment world. Anybody else come up with anything? Anyone else want to share? Okay, there's a lot more. There's so much more that we can do. I know from a workforce development end, one of the things I want to suggest is thinking about legislation and things that we can do legislatively. I know here in Pennsylvania, I was part of a package that went up recently and got approval for a Good Samaritan statute in Pennsylvania. And it actually holds an employer harmless for hiring someone that's justice involved. Pretty rock solid, just taken away one of the biggest excuses that employers say, oh, I don't want to, I'm afraid of liability and getting sued. And now we just took that off of the list and said, well, we're gonna chip away at it. And then occupational licensing is another one, and looking at how we could change some of those laws. Two big things that, in the workforce field, workforce development, we should be looking to be advocates and kind of pushing the needle and changing some of that. Okay, so we got a lot to do, so we're gonna keep the ball rolling a little bit more. And the next topic we want to jump into is looking at the our workforce dealing a little bit. So I'm sharing this graphic with you quite simply because there's a lot of pieces of the workforce system that we've talked about along this journey. Everything from local and elected officials, philanthropy, to labor unions, as well as technical colleges, chambers of commerce, economic development boards, business and industry representatives, you name it, nonprofits. I wanted you to have this graphic because I just came upon it recently, and I think it was really important to share and kind of understand like who else is at the table when we talk about our workforce system. And it is the workforce boards as well as community-based nonprofits. I mean, everybody is in this graphic, and really important. And I also wanted to share with you like how the system manages itself, like what is it that the system does. And so I just share the graphic. Everyone gets the slide deck, so don't worry about writing it all down, but definitely want to share a little bit more of who the players are in the workforce system and who should be at the table as you begin to have these discussions and kind of work through them. The last piece on the workforce development partners is some guidance that I'm going to give you. One is to listen. We need to listen to the men and women that are coming in front of us to understand what their challenges are and how we can work with them a little bit better. So you definitely want to be able to listen to them, to understand it. And And then you also want to be the coach and guide them to success, guide them along the way, as well as being respectful of and aware of the challenges that they have. And then again, really you don't want to assume anything. You want to make sure that it's all present. Can you guys still see me? Andrew, can you guys see me? Hello?
We can
Yes,
see.
we can
Okay,
still see you.
I just want to make sure. Gotcha.
Still see you.
You disappeared on my screen. So, all right. So the next one is the employer hat and wearing the eyes of the employer. And I know Craig and some other are on the call today. So I'm asking you guys, I want you to all wear your employer hat for the next little bit. And I want you to, for the next 5 minutes, kind of wear that lens from an employer. What should or could employers be doing to make this change happen? Like, what is it that they should be targeting or focusing on, and how can they make it happen? So let's go into those breakout rooms again. And with your employer hats on, come up with some ideas. Let's be creative and innovative, but what are we going to do to make change happen in this space? So Brittany, you want to just toss us into some rooms?
Yep, and we're gonna switch it up a little bit just to keep, fresh conversation. If you don't have something pop up on your screen, that just means you're in the main room. So please stay in the main room so we can get it on recording.
Awesome.
So Sally and Chanel, are you guys able to join your breakout rooms? Okay, perfect. So Jeff, this is your breakout room.
All right, thanks. Hey, everybody. There you go. So I have some different people this time. It's great. Jessica, we're together again. But I'm curious from the employer perspective, what is it that employers could be doing to really kind of make this change and to move the needle here. And I think one of the things that I would suggest, and I'll kick the ball off and then we're going to go to everybody else, is changing their job descriptions and really being really transparent about the things that they are acceptable. What is it that they need? What is the talent that they need? And really thinking about how those job descriptions meet their current workforce, the system needs, and how they can all blend it out. But I'm curious, we got some others on the call today. Anyone have any ideas? What should employers be doing here?
I think for some, and it depends, obviously, it's going to be regionally, but I know when I worked at the Work Release Center, one of the big issues even there was transportation. And so if there's a think outside the box type moment where we ended up having some employers that they would they would help pay for some sort of a transportation service, and some would actually just pay, some would enable it, but then they would also that would be something that the employer would then pay, like out of their check or whatever it was at the end of the week. It was just something that made it a little bit cheaper, because just if you take an Uber, it could be $30 or $40 one way. But if you're, actually like a driving service and there's multiple people, it's going to reduce the cost. I just know that was one of the biggest issues, was just how am I going to get to work?
Absolutely. how about advancing or giving them that paycheck in advance? You know, giving them, just giving them some employers now started giving their first paycheck when they get hired. So they know they have money to get to work the first day. They have clothing, they have what they might need to get the first day of work. Anybody else have any ideas? Is it Moises? I'm curious from your hat. What would you want to see happen from the employer's perspective?
How are we doing? How are we doing?
Good,
Yeah,
good, good.
Well, from the employers, well, you said, what did you say? You said the job descriptions and maybe paying the first week upfront. You said was that your
Yeah.
suggestion?
Yeah,
Yeah, those are good. Well, the other thing is, well, we encounter a lot is, and I think different employers are have different levels of scrutiny, different levels of requirements. We have this one gentleman we try to get into, and the airports are just so hard to get in there because if it's not, they got all these different layers. You get a badge. You get to the guy that's doing the badging, the department doing the badging, and then then the custom comes aboard and says, "Oh, you got to pass this other requirement." So I know jobs like that, what could really help us out is help out the customer is one layer where they do the checking, the background checking, and once you're done with that, then you're done and you can become employed. Because otherwise, it's really demoralizing. You do everything for this one guy, this one department, and then they come up with, oh, now here's the next hurdle, and then here's the next hurdle. So that really just kills motivation, wears on people's stamina and perseverance. So we need employers to be much more cognizant of how they got to make it less difficult for people.
yeah. So you raise a great issue. How about that? A pre-clearance. How about everyone
Right.
an employer
Yeah.
would pre-clear somebody to qualify? That would resolve some of that issue. No.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I do like that idea of a pre-clearance, like, in the airports they have, you can pay for, pre-clearance on the TSA lines, you have the premium lines or whatever,
Right.
you don't have to wait as long as everybody else. So, yeah, agencies like mine could definitely, as soon as we meet a customer, start working on that and something like that, a clearance that's already, pre-approved, we help them apply right away. And once the jobs come along, once the jobs are there, well, the guy has his pre-clearance. That's he's ready to be employed.
I love
Great
it.
idea.
I love it. Anyone else have anything real quick? I think we're about to close out the rooms in a second, but
So Jeff, I was just sharing, and I think this is something important to hear that people think about is whether or not, from an employer standpoint, it's really shifting that perception and getting people on board, because we had a CPTP meeting where a major employer, major manufacturer that employs thousands of individuals, their VP of operations believes in this work and working with justice impacted individuals, but yet they couldn't get an initiative going because their VP of HR, similar to somebody on my own team in a small organization, wanted to talk about the negative what ifs versus all the positive what ifs. And that is a real barrier that, getting buy-in and shifting that perception on an individual level because one HR person who is often the gatekeeper can stand in the way of progress unless you have significant inertia to overcome.
So Craig, that is an awesome point. I want to go to Andrea for a minute. Andrea, you see this happen all the time. And I'm curious, like, what guidance, what can we be doing to get that change from the top all the way? Really, it's the HR people that often stand in the way, where even a president or CEO may say, hey, I really want to do this, but and then the HR comes back and says, well, did you think of this? And did you think of this? And maybe this is, and really all those. So what's the best way of kind of addressing some of that? And then when you get done that answer, we're going to David Black, just so you know. So go ahead, Andrea, give it a shot.
Well, again, I was lucky enough to be in the room with Mark, and because my thought was initially once people are in the door. But to your point and to Mark's point, getting people in the door is sometimes the problem. And so what he has done and what he's had success with is including HR people in terms of coming to a correctional institution to provide and to participate in mock interviews, and just getting, because like he said, and we all know, those barriers and those biases that we might not even be aware that we have are broken down once we actually meet people and we get to know people. And I think that the really important thing there is that not only would it be useful to bring HR people out, but I think the plant managers too, because, and Mark said that he's had success with this, because I think that, when we look at an employer and we think, okay, if we can just get to the HR person, we'll be okay. Well, no, because sometimes the barrier is brought up. The HR person will bring people in and will hire people, but then it's the plant manager who's like, yo, wait a minute, this is going to mess with my whole system of management, because, because people have certain needs that they don't want to deal with. So I think that bringing the more we can introduce people, and so that those biases are broken down, and bring people to correctional institutions and let them work with people directly. I think that that's a really good way of eliminating some of those mental barriers that a lot of the employers might have.
Awesome. David, what you got?
I want to have a little different perspective. I'm a retired attorney and I do pro bono representation, sealing and expunging records. So if the HR and the plant manager don't know that someone has a criminal background, then this doesn't become an issue.
Yeah, and so I agree with you. But one issue I have with that is Google. Is that oftentimes we have people Googling and finding out in other ways what the background is. But yeah, I agree. I think if you can get people in the line where a pardon and expungement or an expungement and a record clearing happens, that's awesome. The challenge, quite frankly, is, David, maybe you can tell me what it's like in Illinois, but in Pennsylvania and in most states, it takes time. Like, you're not getting that record cleared or expunged when you just come home. It really takes some time to kind of navigate that process. And there's not a lot of David Blacks out there doing this work. So often people are really over, it just is a process. And so kind of navigating that is one of the challenges. And the other thing I would say is that to Andrea and the last question that Craig had raised was, the truth is, if you can engage HR specialists in the field and get them prepared and educated, boy, would that go a long way. And that SHRM, Getting Talent Back to Work toolkit and that certification, I know it's simple. It's only 10, it's 10 sessions, and it's a really easy certification to get. But it definitely will show HR specialists what some of the challenges are, the very real basic challenges people have when they come home. So something you want to think about, definitely that engagement. Anyone else?
Jeff,
yeah.
Jeff, I was going to say another challenge in the is just with background check companies in general, because I know I've had to go back and say, don't report to me non-convictions. Don't report to me any data longer than 7 years ago, which is allowed by federal law. And, you know, many background companies just puke everything out, whether it's against the law or not. And quite frankly, a lot of my peers just go, oh, okay, they have this, and they make very bad, illegal decisions as
So
a result.
That's a super good point, and that's something that you want to be thinking about too. We talk about how you make change happen and move the needle, but background check legislation is something that is now on the move in the country, and every state should be thinking about how you can really hold employers accountable when they make these decisions, but more importantly, how you can guide them in the background checks in that system to really find the best talent without being biased because of a past criminal history. So definitely a great point, Craig. And things that we have to be mindful of as we go and move forward with background checks. Big deal. Anybody else? All right, we are moving fast, but we got a lot more to do. So just wanted to point out that, you know, part of making the change happen is things that we just talked about is really looking at your hiring practices as an employer and looking at occupational licensing and things like federal and state laws for pardons and expungements, with which David mentioned, but also laws like ban the box and making them stronger and giving them more teeth and more bite. And the same thing with background checks and drug screens. Like, I don't know that I necessarily, if a company wants to do a background check, I'm not sure I'd be so adverse to it if you did it right up front and just said you either qualify or you don't qualify. It's clear. It's when you set someone up and you go through the entire process, the application, the interview, like all of it. And then at the very end, you say, okay, you're a great candidate. We want to hire you. And then all of a sudden the background check pulls them out because of whatever disqualifier that may be. So I do think we have to be more open. And Andrea always talks about the fact that we should be looking at the talent and the skill set they bring to the table and not necessarily what they've done in the past. So those are all things that we will kind of want to have our eye on. So I know we're going to move on because we have a lot more to do, but there was the next one is really education and training partners. And I know there's some on here today. So we're going to be listening to you and watching your suggestions. But what is it that our education and training partners could do to make change happen? What is it that they could do to move the needle? And I saw a few people in their background had that they're in the education space. So we're going to lean on you a little bit. So I want you to have that laundry list ready for us today. So let's go throw us into some breakout rooms and let's have the discussion about, in particular, the education space and career and technical training pieces, what we can do to move the needle. Is Brittany still with us?
Yep, I'm here. I think you
Awesome.
guys
You want to
got
throw
it
us into
down,
some
so-
groups?
Yep,
Okay.
I'm gonna open those up for you.
Thank you.
So it should prompt you to join. If it doesn't, it means you are in the main room as your breakout. Okay, there we go. Here's your breakout room, Jeff.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So Craig, how are you? Benjamin, Ben, how you doing? Chris, nice to see you. So, look, the truth is that education in my mind holds the key to a lot of things that happen both behind the walls and as people come home and begin navigating their challenges. I'm curious, Ben and Craig, what is it that educators and training partners should be doing that can move the needle on this? Any ideas?
One of the things that we're talking about locally, Jeff, is how training partners and educators can interact pre-release to raise the workforce readiness of this population, particularly for individuals that have been incarcerated for a large duration, right? Because some of them don't even know how to use an iPhone, right? That we take it for granted today when our 80 and 90-year-old mothers and grandmothers are using these devices. If you've been incarcerated for 10, 15, 20 years, you may not know that technology, let alone how to operate an ERP or anything else.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we're starting to see some of that nationally with these things called IETs, the Integrated Education Training Programs, where a math teacher is teaching fractions inside of the walls right next to a carpentry teacher. It's teaching carpentry and then providing them some workforce development skills on top of that and career preparedness, kind of blending it all together. Gosh, wouldn't it be awesome if employers had some voice behind the walls and they were actually training people for the jobs when they get out? Be kind of amazing. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm a program manager for our local workforce board, and just kind of it's a personal story, but we had an employer that had looked at one of our local communities strictly because of the technical or the workshop that they have, or the wood shop that they have at the prison. And so his goal was to become more involved with that aspect earlier on. And if there was an opportunity for him to have the prisoners to come out, that opportunity would be there for them. And so, that's one of the things that we've kind of come across, is that we're starting to see that. And so for us, it's having that opportunity to work with them sooner and spearhead that from the workforce side, from the job center side, and being involved with it. And so, some of it may not, a lot of the prisoners are not from the area there's very few that are actually from the area that serve there. But there might be an opportunity there for them, once they come out. And so that's a little bit different perspective. But there's specific things that, for this particular employer, he wants them to be trained on the machine, once they come out and that. So, it's just, there might be some opportunity that's on that side of it too, where if you have an employer that's more willing, and have that training aspect a part of the process. And so,
I love the idea. We do some work with companies like LabCorp and that traditionally haven't been the most reentry friendly in the world. And what they found is they may not be ready for phlebotomy or phlebotomy certification, but LabCorp has 3,000 jobs that are warehousing and logistics. So really getting people engaged at different opportunities with a company. And I think you raise a really good point, Chris, too, about the location. Many prisons and jails in our country, men and women are returning home, but they're not coming home they're going far away from the prison or jail. It's not like you can do a lot of this training behind the walls, because they may be going to a place where, that industry sector is not a high priority, or there may not be a lot of jobs or that kind of thing. And I wonder too, whether, employer engagement inside of the walls, if you could engage with employers like Walmart and do a customer certification, customer satisfaction certification, or a customer certification, customer care, or any kind of things like that. Like, wouldn't that go a long way to really preparing people to come home? And maybe it would open up a lane to an employer like a Walmart or a Target or some of the big companies that would be looking for that kind of talent. It's a great point. Molly, what are you thinking?
Sorry, hi, I'm here with ICSPS support. I'm taking over for Brittany, so I just popped on here.
There you go. Welcome. Thank you. Good to see you. We're going to so we're talking back and forth of the employer education, the education and training partner piece. And I'm curious, from the education end, Craig, you're in this a lot. Is there an education level that most employers are comfortable with, or that they're looking they're looking for to bring into an employment. Is education really that important, or can you train somebody? Can employers train people for what they want to do?
I think employers can train people. The issue is, and this is why so many employers struggle, is because they don't want to. They, so many managers want fully qualified, fully trained versus build your own. And that building process takes time, which is why it's important to, where we can, start some of that work pre-release so that you have somebody ready to go when they get released.
So that's a great point too. Like, is it too much to ask of employers to kind of to get involved? Is it too much for us to be asking them? And I think when I've worked on some programs with Marshall's TJX, where Marshall's allows us to come onto their site and actually do GED training or high school equivalency training as part of the job. So I don't think that they need to be mutually exclusive. I think there's probably a lane there as well. Hey, Andrea. So training and education and training partners, we had a kind of lively discussion about, an employer's obligation or responsibility or desire to. Molly, what are you thinking?
Sorry, hi, I'm here with ICSPS support. I'm taking over for Brittany, so I just popped
Oh.
on here.
There you go. Welcome. Thank you. Good to see you. We're going to so we're talking back and forth of the employer education, the education and training partner piece. And I'm curious from the education end, Craig, you're in this a lot. Is there an education level that most employers are comfortable with, or that they're looking for to bring into an employment? Is education really that important, or can you train somebody? Can employers train people for what they want to do?
I think employers can train people. The issue is, and this is why so many employers struggle, is because they don't want to. They, so many managers want fully qualified, fully trained versus build your own. And that building process takes time, which is why it's important to, where we can, start some of that work pre-release so that you have somebody ready to go when they get released.
So that's a great point too. Like, is it too much to ask of employers to kind of to get involved? Is it too much for us to be asking them? And I think I've worked on some programs with Marshall's TJX, where Marshall's allows us to come onto their site and actually do GED training or high school equivalency training as part of the job. So I don't think that they need to be mutually exclusive. I think there's probably a lane there as well. Hey, Andrea. So training and education and training partners, we had a kind of lively discussion about, an employer's obligation or responsibility or desire to educate people or provide training. Anybody want to jump on the pool, Andrea? I'm curious, what do you guys talk about in your panel?
Mine. So the feeling was that inside, the educational partners are doing a pretty good job. And the problem becomes on the outside. And then our discussion, once we started talking about the outside, we sort of veered away from talking about education and training partners and started talking about the ways that people fall through the cracks on the outside. So we sort of went awry, but we had a good discussion.
That's what it's all about. Any of our education or training partners on today want to share a little bit of their insight? Jamie or Lori Warren? Any
So
ideas?
we talked about the work-based learning that we're doing with our OWIA, with Kiwani Life Skills. We have OJTs, on the job training programs, with 2 different employers right now, where people are getting on day release and they're going out and working. And then we actually have work experiences or paid internships kind of mentality. We have 2 other crews, one with the city of Kiwanee, one with the city of Galva, and they're out working and they're learning that way. They're getting their training hands-on. The 2 employers, they're welders, for the most
Wow.
part are the positions. And with the cities, it's mainly, maintenance. So, they're getting their training, they're just getting it hands-on versus through a school.
Yeah, that just makes so much sense anymore too. The OJTs are on the job trainings. You know, if we could do more of them and have more work release programs, you know, if you had a work release program where people were actually getting out and getting, number one, it'd be probably a healthier environment inside because they'd be out, they'd be, you know, productive, they'd be learning, they'd be anxious about, you know, moving forward, kind of getting their game plan. There are just not enough, there's not enough effort that we put towards those work release programs. So those training programs where we can get them prepared on the outside, and working with the employers. Anyone else want to jump on education and training partners? Moving the needle. I will tell you, the Department of Education in Washington is going to be spending a lot of time over the next few years, really looking to build out the IET model and really blending people, that both education piece as well as that workforce piece together. So keep an eye out for it. A lot of funding going to be coming down over the next few years as well. All right, we're going to march on because we got more to talk about. And just a few things that you should have your eyes on. One is, you know, that you want to welcome and assess the players' strengths, the people that are coming into your circle when it comes to education and training, and really understand everyone educationally may be at a very different level in the system, but when they come to you, you want to be able to know what their strengths are and what are the things they need to work on. And the ultimate goal is to guide them to a pathway, a career pathway, their success, and then be aware of all those challenges. And the last one, which I really like, is just be a fan. You know, when you have people coming home, you want to support them, but you want to be a fan, encourage them and guide them along the way. So this one we're going to talk about together, and that's community and reentry providers. This is a whole different class of we haven't spent really a lot of time on. We talked about all these kind of wraparound supports, we call them, that are out there and everybody doing this work. But I want to open this up to a discussion for all of us, which is really, what is it that the community and reentry providers should be doing to help make this change happen? We've been hyper-focused on workforce development and looking at our workforce systems, our workforce partners and employers. But how about the community and reentry providers? What should they be doing? How can they help us move the needle? Andrea, any thoughts on that?
I think that it's, I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record. I think that it's, I think that we have a lot of the pieces in place. I think it's a matter of making those connections and creating, I mean, I think that there are places where we need liaisons, but I think that sometimes it's just aware of what the programs are. And like, for example, I mean, to go back to IET, a lot of people aren't even aware that that's happening, but once that's implemented, then there are connections that should be made on the outside, right? And some of those connections go through the community and reentry providers, just being aware of the program. There's Indeed just started a platform for skills-based hiring. It's called Skills Connect. It was just launched about a week or 10 days ago. And the purpose of it is that Indeed is realizing that a lot of people are left out of the workforce because of the reliance on academic credentials. And this Skills Connect platform helps people write resumes that are skills-based and connects them with employers who are looking for skills, you know, for particular skills. This is something that community and reentry providers could be aware of. I think that there's a lot that's out there, but everyone is so busy doing their job that they don't necessarily have the time to learn about what other people are providing. So, I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but I think, like I've said from the beginning, the information is out there. It's just, how do we all learn about it?
Yeah, it's funny. I think that we don't give enough credit to our community and reentry providers that are out there because they often are our eyes and ears. They're the ones that are seeing what we need to see in order to help people succeed. And we don't engage them enough. We don't bring them to the table in the HR, in the hiring process, or in that whole process. When they don't get a resume from someone, an HR team doesn't get the resume from someone, instead of asking the community partner, can you send over the resume? Or maybe they don't know how to download it. Maybe they don't know how to use a USB or whatever it is. But asking and engaging our community and reentry providers and partners in this whole thing, I think can go a really long way in helping kind of break some of that barrier. We have, I know I had a looking forward, it was a reentry program in Philadelphia, and we told employers when our people got hired, our students got hired, we told them when they miss a day of work or when there's a problem at work, that if they called us and told us, that we'd be glad to kind of be the credible messenger and find out like what was going on and how can we help you and what are the issues. And I would say 9 times out of 10 it were things that were just so simple to fix, like they needed diapers for their child and couldn't get to work that day, or had to go to a court hearing, or whatever it was. They were things that just opened the lines of communication, and the community partner and the reentry partner had kind of that perspective and that local voice where they could really help the employer navigate it. And it does, I think, Craig, you're right, when we talked about, the employer vesting in this. And it does take some work. It's not just like hiring somebody in the general public that maybe doesn't have a background. There's more to it than that. There's more things that you should be thinking about. Anybody else want to share on the community and reentry side? So some of the things that I think we should be mindful of is that welcome home. When people come home from prison and jail, they should come to welcome arms, and they've spent their time, done their time away, and now it's sometimes a good handshake and just a welcome home can go a really, really long way. I also think we need to be patient and take our time and help people understand the process and the way it works. And, I've been saying this a lot throughout this series, is to be curious. What do people need? Ask the question. Can you get to work the first day? Maybe you can go with John. Maybe we can pair you up. Maybe it's a mentoring program. Maybe we can partner. We can have somebody in the reentry program that can get them there for the first few days till they get off the ground. And then don't give up. There's this awesomeness in everyone, and sometimes it just takes some time to help people get into the right spot where they can navigate their new job and their new employment. I'm sorry, we're not in presenter mode. I'll see if I can make that happen. 1 second. Let's share again. Can you guys see it now? Okay. There you go. So I think there's a lot of those things that need to be thought about as we work with reentry partners and as people come home. And the last one I want to kind of talk about is the justice impacted individual. And what is it that they could be doing? What is it that people that are justice impacted should be doing or could be doing to move the ball forward and make change happen? And that's a hard question. And I'm wondering if you were wearing those glasses, what is it that you would hope people that are that are justice impacted coming home, that you'd want them to see? How is it that they could better change their perspective? And I'll be honest with you, I have a whole laundry list of these that I give to people coming home. And one of them is to wear your pants so that your butt crack isn't showing. Like, I know it sounds silly, but really getting people to think about those challenges of how they present themselves and even how they tell their stories, the stories about themselves. So anybody have any thoughts on what is it you would want people that are justice involved or justice impacted that are coming home, you'd want them to know or to be thinking about as they navigate home? Anybody? Wyatt.
I think you bring up a good point is, represent, think about what brought you to where you are today and the hard work, and what were the expectations put on you on the inside, for lack of a better term, and how are you going to maintain some of those disciplines on the outside? I think, and having a plan of action, and as we've discussed, Jeff, one of the hardest plans of action is housing for this population, and trying to figure that out and connecting with resources that can help with that.
Yeah, so I think that's probably the biggest barrier for most of the people I work with is finding a place to live and finding that stable housing environment. I wonder if and that's an area, Craig, you might be able to say as an employer, how likely are employers to really want to dive into that area? We often think of employment as 9 to 5. People come in 9, they leave at 5, and that's the game, right? That's it. And it's hard to get employers to think about what happens after 5 o'clock, and especially with their employers where, that's a real challenge. People often come home and they're not returning home to a house when they get their job. They're returning home to a park bench, a street somewhere, a friend's sofa, some place where housing is not really stable. But how can we change the needle on this? Is it providing more housing opportunities? Is it beyond this workforce system? And why is it that housing, area of housing is not included in this whole discussion?
So my understanding, because I've asked some of those questions, Jeff, just like we were talking earlier about employers and the fact that law says we can only go back 7 years, right? Housing, I talked to a local partner who talked to HUD on my behalf. So housing and urban development. And they said many landlords go back as much as 99 years on employee on their rentees background check. So many of them conduct backgrounds, and many of them go back a significant amount of time on those backgrounds. So that is a huge barrier, that the laws that apply to employment don't apply to every area of life.
So for sure, it's one of the big legislative changes I think that needs to happen, because generally in our housing market, in our housing field, especially at the federal level, that there's been this notion that it's true, is that I think it's the Sherman Act, if you have a felony on your record, that you can't reside in public housing. And many low-level drug offenders are in that blanket where they can't get housing. I'm curious though, like what can we do to fix it? What is it that's going to take for us? And is it the place of our workforce development systems to engage at that level? Or is this something that's bigger than that?
So if there's a lack of I will say it is the workforce system. They are the intersection between the job seeker and businesses, and they have a direct line to most states' DCEO or their equivalent. And this is not a workforce issue. This is not a business issue. This is a society issue. And workforce systems connect a lot of those pieces, and it's breaking down those silos to bring people to the table to have conversations with legislators, whether it's at the state level or federal.
Yeah, I just think of I'm a CEO of a company, and one of my major goals is to make sure that my staff are adequately provided for, that they're in healthy environments, that they're, that I'm helping them or guiding them so that they can be successful for me, which oftentimes means that they're successful at home in their home life, and that their home work-life balance is an important thing. I'm not sure as a society we're there yet. I don't think employers have as much vesting in that work-life balance and making sure their workers succeed outside of the house outside of work as they do succeeding inside of work. And I think that that makes a strong individual, a stronger company, but I'm not sure that as a nation we're there yet. I think we have a lot of work to do, especially in the housing sector, really trying to help people. But awesome, great discussion. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? I will say housing and identification are probably the two biggest challenges facing men and women coming home just to get back into the workforce. That and the background check are kind of the three. There is something to be said about looking at our justice system and understanding how we can start fixing a system that's terribly broken. When almost 45% of all people that are incarcerated are there on technical violations, we need to start thinking about, like, who are we incarcerating in our country, and what should we be doing in order to really fix our criminal justice system, so that there really is justice, so that there's more people coming home, and that we're setting them up for success and not failure. And some places are getting it. I think some systems, and the DOC of Illinois certainly is starting to get that, how important it is to make some of those changes, and revisiting their parole system, revisiting what, the technical violations happen, what happens when that system happens. And I think there's a lot more work that has to be done across many sectors in order for us to really create a robust system. We're not going to have a breakout system here, but just something to think about as we move forward. Legislatively, things like ban the box, clean slate, occupational licensing, background checks, and pardons and expungements. These are all things that I think help legislatively, can move the needle a little bit, but they can't be done in a silo either. They need employers at the table. The DOC needs to be there. Jails need to be there. All of our systems, including government, needs to be sitting at the table and saying, what do we need to know? How can we help? What can we do to fix it? And really chip away at some of the big barriers. So the last piece of this is you. And what is it that you can be doing? I think we're all on this call because we're vested in trying to fix the system. But I like to just engage. What is it that all of you could be doing today that could help fix the system? I think, Craig, there's some people on the call obviously are doing it already. I mean, you've taken a large step with your company of really investing, stepping up, engaging. I think you've been on just about every workshop that we've had and sharing the employer's perspective. And I think that's really super well recognized. I know Mark is on, Tom, a bunch of others that are on the call. So what is it you suggest? What is it that you could be doing that's going to make change happen in this space? Getting personal, but come on. Tom, you're sitting back, you're listening. What is it you want to do or could do that's can change and can move the needle? Anybody?
Well, I think from a workforce development perspective, and the individuals that I work with and the employers, primarily the employers, and getting those that come home and looking for a job to kind of more, they need skills, but try to encourage them to change some of their thinking in terms of, one, being transparent when they meet and talk with an employer, and being comfortable with that. But more important, and equally important, I should say, is to think bigger. So that they need to be transparent, but change the conversation then to, this is where I'm going, and helping those job seekers to find out what they could do by thinking bigger, that other opportunities. So this is where I've been. I'm comfortable talking about that, but let me share where I'm going and what I'm doing, because I believe that the employers I work with, they do a background check, they look at the background, they're not really concerned about the background, and what the concern is how is that going to affect me going forward? in the future. So if the job seeker can then change that conversation to, this is how I can help you, this is where I'm going, this is what I can do. So it's more of changing their thinking in addition, not more of, but in addition to providing skills and resources.
I love it. Awesome. I love that think bigger. We often don't, as somebody that's come home, don't often think about thinking bigger. We think about survival and feeding our families and ourselves and housing. But if we can get people to think bigger and encourage them to think bigger, that is just would be a remarkable thing. Thanks, Tom, for sharing. Anybody else? What can you do wearing the hats that you wear? Anybody?
I can tell you as an employer, it's just sharing the success stories when the platform arises to break down the barrier for other employers and challenge our peers, employers, that they have the ability to do the same, and the risks aren't much different than hiring anyone off the street, except you know their story and you know somebody's trying to take a step forward in a positive way.
I love it. All good stuff. All good stuff. So when we close out today and we walk around, if you could just take 5 minutes or 2 minutes and just think about what's 1 or 2 things that you can do in your work that can actually make a change, that can make a difference. It goes a long way. And that's part of why we've done this, is really getting people to think about how you can make change, what you can do individually, but also what your system that you're in, whether you're an employer, workforce development or developer, like what you can do to make change happen. I want to thank everybody. I'll open the floor, keep it open for any questions, and we'll hang out for a little bit afterwards. But I want to thank everybody for participating, that in the breakout sessions and throughout the entire sessions that we've been doing. It's been great working with everyone and sharing all of our passion and mission and all of this. But more importantly, learning what's happening in the state of Illinois and engaging with all of you. My contact information is up there, as is Andrea's. We'll be sending out within the next day or so the next convening, which will be in Chicago, and that'll be an employer convening. So we're really looking and targeting employers that are going to be involved. And if you have employers that you know of in the Chicago area, it's going to be a wonderful event. So please make sure you share out with them, and we'd be glad to. If you have any questions, feel free to let us know. The last thing I will tell you is that in this workshop and in this series, we have a toolkit that is going to be shared with everyone that's ever attended a workshop here, and that will be out within the next several weeks, and it will be both digital and written if you need a copy of it. But definitely a great resource that you'll be able to share with your colleagues, your friends. Definitely use it as a desk reference. But of everything we've talked about in the series, and boy, is it a lot, and to show you all of these resources and then some. These are all things that we've talked about that we're going to be sharing with you in a more structured way so that you'll be able to get all of these resources for your own use by the time we get done. So just a heads up that it's on its way and it's coming, but it is our last, it's the last piece of the puzzle, making sure that you have something that you could take home and use in your everyday work. We're going to stay out for a few minutes. Andrea and I will stay here, but Craig, thank you. I know we'll be seeing you hopefully in Chicago in the near future. Thanks for all you're doing. Mark, thank you. And big shout out to all of the staff that's been helping us navigate this. So, and all the new friends that we've met, you guys have all been super helpful, learning about Chicago and the Illinois area, and how we can help you build your workforce systems stronger. So look forward to working with all of you in the future, and we're going to hang out if anybody wants to. Also, a shout out to Sally. Sally Sudman's an intern that's working for us this summer at the PD Green program. So I know she's been on listening and taking copious notes, I'm sure. So I'm glad she got to join us today. Any questions? last but not least, I do want to give a big shout out to my partner in crime, Andrea Lopez, has just been amazing. And we sit down before every workshop and kind of drill into, get into the weeds on things or what we're hoping to share. And she's been a great partner and looking forward to working with her across the country as we do. So thank you. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Great. Let you guys get on with the rest of your day, and look forward to seeing everybody on the 21st in Chicago if you can make it, but keep an eye out for all that information. So thanks, everybody.